Hello and welcome along. So yes, of course, I've been ill again, and you can probably still hear it in my voice. There's some flu thing going around here that everyone's getting, and I seem to have had like 3 times in a row now over the course of like 2 months. So I've managed to drag myself out of bed to make another video, as it's been a while. And this time we're going to talk about Fulgrim and the time he could have killed Dorn but didn't. So near the culmination of the Horus Heresy, during the siege of the Imperial Palace, there is a moment where the traitors are almost winning and they're about to break through into the main inner sanctum of the palace. And the war has got to a point where there are 4 major battles or sub-battles that are going on along the front around the Imperial Palace that are seen as major tipping points by both Dorn and Perturabo, who are obviously running the campaigns for each side. And they both realise that these 4 battles are the key to the quick victory that the traitors want. And they also both realise that Dorn doesn't have enough resources left to defend all of them, all 4 of these points. So Dorn decides the only way he can win some of these battles is to sacrifice one of them. So he secretly under-defends 1 point and sacrifices that to being able to defend the other 3. This in itself deserves a separate video about that part of the campaign, but what this video is about is during this episode that's covered in the Horus Heresy series book Saturnine, there comes a point when Dorn is drawn out onto the wall to fight in person himself, which he doesn't really do throughout the Heresy, because he's obviously more important for him to stay in a bunker and sort of coordinate things, give out orders, etc., because he's responsible for the whole battlefront, not just for one section. And if he goes out and fights on his own, mano a mano with one of his brothers, one, he could die. Well, that would leave a void in the leadership. People, it would lead to probably a quicker collapse of the loyalist defence. But also, it would just the time of doing it would mean that he couldn't be monitoring the battlefield and giving out orders and so on. So it wouldn't really be practical for him to do that. And so he's never gone out and done this. But he kind of wants to, and he feels like he feels a kind of mixture of shame that he hasn't gone out and fought, guilt that he's sending out all these other people to go and die for him, and just frustration that he can't get his hands on these traitors who have done this, and he would just love to strangle them to death himself. This is obviously that all makes sense. That's what you'd expect. But also, it's important to say that he would die if he fought any of his traitor brothers. He has very little chance of defeating any of his brothers in single combat. So as much as he'd like to, it wouldn't be a good idea if he did anyway. Now, he narrowly, of course, famously, if you watch this channel, survived the fight with Alfarius, who should have killed him, had him at his mercy. The Emperor intervened and allowed Dorn to win. That should have taught him something, but it didn't. So he took out of that, I'm better than Alfarius, aren't I? Instead of, I nearly died then. I probably should avoid these one-on-one fights with my brothers. Now, in this occasion, he decides to go out to the wall because he kind of has to, because the defense is about to collapse at that point on the Saturnine gate. And this is because Fulgrim has led the entire Emperor's Children Legion in an assault on that gate. And because Dorn wasn't expecting this, he has not fortified this position with enough troops, enough resources to defend against the entire Emperor's Children Legion. They overrun the wall, and Fulgrim and his closest followers are standing triumphantly on the wall. They've won for all intents and purposes. The Saturnine gate has been lost, and as Dorn's plans for the defense have failed. Now, because of this, Dorn has personally led his own elite troops and is accompanied by Sigismund, who's one of his best fighters, and, well, perhaps his best, actually, probably some people would argue the best, and have gone to sort of personally deal with this problem. So in sort of last gasp hope of stopping this assault by the Emperor's Children and turning them back. And so it ends up with both of them on the wall, standing opposite each other and then engaging in a fight. Fulgrim is fighting Dorn and Sigismund at the same time, and this comes near the end of the book. This is kind of like the culmination of the book, this battle, and a couple of other turning point battles that are going on at the same time. And it really should be something quite special, something that really stands out within the whole Horus Heresy series, like most of these fights between Primarchs do. But this is a real letdown, frankly. Now, firstly, in universe, it's a letdown because what actually happens is they fight for a bit. Fulgrim basically toys with them. He lets them have some strikes on him. It doesn't really respond. He just kind of just dances around. And that's kind of part of his character in that he doesn't particularly care if he gets hit because he enjoys pain. And he's so skillful that he could move out of the way at any point he wants. He knows he can kill them at any time he wants. It's made quite clear in the way it's written that he is just not really trying, that he's playing them with them like a cat plays with a mouse. So he's just waiting for when he's going to get bored of that and kill them. But instead, instead of that, getting bored of playing with them and killing them, he just stops and says, "Nah, I'm just going to leave." And he said, "Like, well, you're going to die, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going." And his reason for going is because he's tired of being hurt. That's literally what he says. It's like, what? He's a demon Primarch of Slaanesh. He loves being hurt. That's like his one thing. It's just a weird situation. So he just wanders off. He takes his legion with him, gives up the ground they've taken, and Dorn wins this miraculous victory where not only does he defeat Fulgrim, defeat in major air quotes, and survives this impossible situation where he should have died as he's surrounded by the elite of the Emperor's children with only Sigismund to help him, and somehow they fight their way out, killing hundreds of Emperor's children. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just a bit silly. It's like, well, why would Fulgrim do that? Yeah, Fulgrim is fickle, very fickle. He is really easy for him to lose his focus because he gets bored all the time. That's part of his problem of being, seduced by Slaanesh. He's forever seeking more excess, and nothing really stimulates him anymore. But this would have been something that really did stimulate him. This is a very unusual situation with a very unique opportunity, which would have really tantalized him. The chance to kill Dorn. The chance to kill Dorn ahead of Horus being able to kill him, or Perturabo. The thrill of that would have been massive for him. And just the to be able to fight someone who's roughly equal to him would have been an incredible thrill for him, because he's so used to just killing people so easily because as a Primarch and a demon Primarch at that. So the thrill of that moment would have been huge for him. And secondly, he can't get tired of being hurt because that's his whole personality now. He loves pain. It's the only thing that makes him feel anything. So the whole situation makes no sense whatsoever. So I can't understand how Dan Abnett, who is the writer of this particular book, Saturnine, came up with this as the way that he would deal with this situation. Now, of course, we know that Dorn and Sigismund both have to survive this moment because they exist later on in the story. They exist after the heresy, in fact. So they can't just die here. The reason that they survive has to be much more convincing than, well, Fulgrim decides that he's just fed up with being hurt and he walks off, taking the Legion with him, leaving like his 100 best guys who are going to obviously kill Dorn in his mind, but they don't, because Dorn and Sigismund are so amazing. They somehow kill 100 elite and Emperor's children, including many of the heroes of the Emperor's children, who are all some of the best swordsmen in the whole of the 40k universe at this time. I mean, it's just bollocks. Guilliman nearly dies when he fights 10 Alpha Legion. Very nearly dies, in fact should have really died. This is impossible for Dorn and Sigismund to survive this situation, and yet they fight their way out of it. Quite comfortably, in fact, killing all of these Emperor's children. These aren't just, Astartes, Emperor's children Astartes, who in itself, 100 versus those two would have been pretty hard for them to get out of, as we've established. Guilliman nearly killed by one squad. Let's say that there's two of them, and obviously they're not two Primarchs, though. Sigismund's not a Primarch. He's good. He's very good. But he's not a Primarch, so he doesn't double their chances of getting out. 20 Emperor's children should have probably been too much for them. But 100 of the best, I mean, this is ridiculous. They should have easily been killed. But that's all beside the point, because they shouldn't have even been alive to fight those 100, because Fulgrim should have killed them then and there. He would have loved that chance, and he just walks away. Gives up everything, and just says, yeah, I've had enough. I don't want to be hurt anymore. I mean, that's some pretty terrible writing. The weird thing about this is Dan Abnett is probably the best writer amongst the writers of the Horus Heresy. He wrote Gaunt's Ghosts and Eisenhorn, and he writes most of the better books within the Horus Heresy are written by him. or at least quite a large number of them are. And generally, this book itself, Saturnine, is a good book. There's lots of really good stuff in it. But this one scene, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's like he was, I don't know, he was rushed for the end, and they just said, you've got to come up with a reason why Dorn survives this, and he just came up with this. I know, what if Fulgrim just doesn't want to fight and walks off? Oh, that'll do. Oh, but what of all those other Emperor's children? What happened to them? Well, I don't know. Dorn and Sigismund, yeah, they're just really good, and they just kill them all. Oh, okay, yeah, that was all right then. And then they got it out. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me how this was allowed through. It kind of breaks all of the consistency of the whole series of like power levels and general ability to fight and motivations of characters. It was also just a great opportunity to have this heroic last stand of Dorn and Sigismund, where they are drawn out into the open for the first time and they have to fight. They're the only last hope. There's no one else available. They have to go out there and do it themselves. And Dorn kind of gives in to this need to do something personally instead of ordering someone else to do it. And all of that really makes sense and would really work as a great character motivation. And there he is, and he's going to die, and he dies. And Sigismund dies, and the Emperor's children take the wall. It's a tragic sacrifice. Also, and it would also be the natural step within the battle between Dorn and Perturabo for this chess game they're playing with each other, where they see these openings and they close the openings and they bait each other into making mistakes and so on. And this is the final step in that, where Perturabo has drawn Dorn out, who he thinks he's made the move of killing Horus, which is another part of this whole event where Dorn believes that there's a certain attack going to come through a fault in the bedrock underneath the Saturnine gate, and he predicts this correctly, and he manages to kill some very senior members of the Lunar Wolves, but he thinks he's going to get Horus, and he doesn't get Horus because Horus isn't there, and Perturabo has again outmaneuvered him and made him think something's going to happen that doesn't, and then he captures him on the wall because suddenly the whole of the Emperor's children are going to attack, and there's Dorn having to leave his bunker, and instead of him getting the strike at the head of the snake, which he thinks he's going to do with Horus, it's Perturabo who gets to strike off the head of the loyalist snake in Dorn, and that's what should have happened. Now, of course, as I said earlier, the problem with that is Dorn and Sigismund both obviously have to survive because they are doing stuff later in the story, mostly after the heresy, to be fair, but they still got a little bit to do before the end of the heresy. So how do you deal with that? Well, there's other ways. There's lots of ways. You could do what they did with the Battle of Pluto and sort of wave your hand and say, well, the Emperor intervenes and he survives. But this guy, Dorn has the thickest plot armor in all of 40k. Well, certainly during the 30k period. He's ridiculous. He should have died so many times. That wouldn't have been great had they just gone, well, the Emperor did something and they both survived. But you could have had it, and maybe one of his brothers intervenes. Sanguinius is there nearby, and well, not that near, but he's probably within a few hundred kilometers, and he can fly. He could have easily had a premonition that this was going to happen and intervened. He drives Fulgrim off and saves Dorn and Sigismund, and that would have been plausible. He also would have made for another epic Primarch on Primarch battle, which would have been a great bit of entertainment as well. So you could have had Fulgrim defeats Dorn, has him at his mercy, he's about to kill him, and then suddenly out of the air, smash, comes Sanguinius, and they have this another epic battle. And it's a close call because Fulgrim is a very skillful fighter, even amongst the Primarchs, and he's got the added advantage of being a demon, but he can't beat Sanguinius, and that really shows just how incredible Sanguinius is. What sets up more the final showdown between Horus and Sanguinius. And Fulgrim is then driven off and leaves in shame because he had it right there. He had won the heresy effectively. If he had killed Dorn and secured the Saturnine gate, but he's failed and he retreats in shame. That would have been a far better way of writing. So that's my thoughts on the situation. So I had to make this video just to get that out because it was annoying me so much. It's also interesting that the fight between Dorn and Fulgrim, I'd never really talked about. I didn't even know it had happened till I finally got to reading Saturnine. Whereas most of the individual fights between Primarchs have been sort of poured over for years, decades. They're so rare events where they happen that it's like, oh, really? What this is what really happens when they fight each other. What can we take from this? But this fight is never really mentioned, which is interesting in itself. Anyway, so let me know your thoughts on this. Am I being unreasonable? Is this actually well written? Do you think that Fulgrim would actually walk away because he's fed up of the hurt Do you think that Dorn would actually beat like 100 elite Emperor's Children in single combat? Well, almost single combat. You can't really count Sigismund. He's not a Primarch. He might be good, but like 2 of those Emperor's Children could have killed him. So it's basically Dorn versus 100. Maybe you do think that. Maybe you're a massive Dorn fan. I don't know. But I think there's no evidence throughout the Horus Heresy that Dorn could have survived that situation. So, yeah, great to hear from you again in the comments. Hopefully I'll make another video soon. We'll see how well I am. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.